On the morning I retired, I woke up at 6:30 out of habit, even though there was nowhere I needed to be anymore. I made coffee, I sat at my kitchen table, and I waited for my phone to ring. It didn't. 31 years of teaching 7th grade English, and the day it ended, my house was silent, no cake, no card taped to the door, not even a text from my daughter Chelsea. I told myself she was busy. I told myself a lot of things that morning, the same way I'd been telling myself things for 4 years. Here's what I mean by that. 4 years ago, Chelsea called me crying. Her husband Ryan's commission checks had dried up, she said, and they were 2 months from losing their rental. "Mom, we don't know what else to do." I remember exactly where I was standing when she said it. In this kitchen, holding a dish towel, feeling my whole chest cave in. So I did what I thought a mother does. I opened a joint account. I started wiring $950 into it every month, without fail, rain or shine, whether I could easily afford it or not. I told myself I was keeping a roof over my daughter's head. That morning, coffee in hand, phone silent, I opened Facebook out of boredom more than anything. And there it was. A photo. Chelsea and Ryan on a beach, sunburned and grinning, and beside them, Ryan's mother, Patricia, in a wide straw hat, looking like she'd stepped out of a resort brochure. The caption read, "Finally taking the woman who's always been in our corner on the trip she deserves." I read it 3 times. Then I looked at the location tag. Cancun. My coffee went cold in my hand. I want to be honest with you about something before I go further. I wasn't always the kind of woman who could sit still with anger. I spent most of my adult life smoothing things over, saying it's fine, writing checks instead of asking hard questions. So what happened next surprised even me. I didn't cry. I didn't call Chelsea screaming. Something in me just went very, very quiet. I opened my banking app. The joint account balance read $45,600, 4 years. $950 a month, sent to keep my daughter from losing her home. And there it sat, untouched, growing, waiting, while she and Ryan planned a vacation for his mother. I didn't call. I didn't text. I selected the full balance, transferred it into my personal savings, and in the memo line, I typed one word, returned. Then I set my phone face down on the table and, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt calm. Let me back up, because you should understand who I was before that morning, and how I became the kind of person who could be lied to for 4 straight years without noticing. I raised 2 kids alone after my husband passed, Chelsea and my son Danny, 2 years younger. Chelsea was always the bright one, the persuasive one, the one who could talk her way into or out of anything since she was 6 years old. I remember her at 8, convincing her 2nd grade teacher to let her retake a spelling test she'd already passed, just because she wanted a better grade than the girl who sat next to her. I remember thinking, even then, that girl is going to be either wildly successful or a lot of trouble. Possibly both. Danny was quieter. He noticed things. He just never said much about them. When Chelsea got a new bike for her 12th birthday because her old one embarrassed her at school, Danny didn't ask for anything to match. He just quietly kept riding his old one 2 more years, and I never once thought to ask him if that was fair. I look back now and I'm ashamed of how invisible his patience made him to me. Somewhere along the way, without either of us quite deciding it, Chelsea became the child I worried about, and Danny became the child I trusted to be fine. I gave Chelsea rides, gave Chelsea money, gave Chelsea the benefit of every doubt. In high school, when she wrecked her first car 2 weeks after getting her license, I paid for the repairs without a lecture. When Danny asked, at 16, if he could borrow $40 for a school trip, I made him do chores for 2 weeks first, because I wanted to teach him responsibility. I didn't set a standard to both of my children, and for years I never stopped to ask myself why. When Chelsea married Ryan, a nice enough man, sales rep, commission-based income, always between big deals, I welcomed him the way I welcome most people, cautiously but with an open door. That open door became a problem I didn't recognize as a problem for years. Chelsea had a keypad code to my garage, which she'd converted, without asking, into a personal storage unit. It started small, a few boxes of clothes she didn't wear yet. Then an exercise bike still in its packaging, bought during some brief resolution to get fit, never opened. A vacuum she swore she'd pick up next weekend for 2 straight years, a folding table. 3 lamps she'd bought on sale and never used. She'd let herself in when I wasn't home, drop off more boxes, sometimes take things from my kitchen without mentioning it. A casserole dish here, a set of towels there. I told myself that's just what family does. I told myself that so many times it started to sound true. And then 4 years ago, came the crying phone call, the foreclosure, the $950 a month that I never once missed, Not even the month my own car needed new brakes and I put it on a credit card instead of touching my savings. Not even the month my roof started leaking and I patched it myself with a tarp because I didn't want to dip into what I was setting aside for Chelsea. I want to be clear. I wasn't blind because I was foolish. I was blind because I loved her. And love has a way of making you not want to check the receipts. The unfairness didn't announce itself all at once. It built slowly the way water wears down stone. There was the Thanksgiving 3 years ago when Chelsea arrived 2 hours late because she'd lost track of time shopping, and I quietly reheated the whole meal without a word, while the year before, when Danny was 15 minutes late because of traffic, Chelsea had made a comment about how some people just don't respect other people's effort. I remember noticing the double standard even then, and saying nothing. There was the birthday 2 years ago, mine, not hers, when she called 40 minutes after everyone had already sung and cut the cake, apologizing vaguely about work stuff, and I told her it was fine, it was totally fine, don't worry about it. I have said the words, "it's fine" to my daughter more times in the last decade than I've said to anyone else in my life combined. There was the spring she asked to borrow my car for just the weekend, and kept it for 11 days, and when I finally asked for it back, she acted as though I was the one being unreasonable. There was the summer I found out, entirely by accident, that she'd used my name as a reference for an apartment application without asking, and told the landlord I'd happily co-sign if needed. Something I'd never agreed to. None of these things, on their own, were catastrophic, but they built a kind of architecture in our relationship, brick by brick, until the whole structure was built around one unspoken rule. My needs came second, always, quietly, without either of us ever saying it out loud. The night before my retirement, Chelsea texted me, "Big week, Mom, talk soon." I assumed she meant my last day of work. I didn't know she meant a beach in Mexico, so there I was, the morning after, staring at a Cancun photo with Patricia's name in the caption where mine should have been, $45,000 sitting untouched in an account I'd been bleeding myself dry to fill. That was the moment something in me, quietly, without drama, snapped into place. Not anger exactly, clarity. I put my shoes on and walked to the hardware store 4 blocks away. The man behind the counter, Frank, has known me 20 years. "Morning, Maggie," he said. "Thought you'd be celebrating today." "Change of plans," I told him. "I need a new keypad for my garage, something Chelsea doesn't know the code to." He didn't ask questions. He just walked me to the right aisle, and for a moment, standing there under the fluorescent lights comparing lock models, I felt strangely like myself again. A woman who could make a decision and follow through on it without asking anyone's permission first. Back home, I spent an hour installing it myself, following the instructions with my reading glasses sliding down my nose, more satisfied with every screw than I probably should have been. When I finally punched in the new code and heard the lock engage, it made a small, solid click. I stood there in my driveway for a second, just listening to it. Then I went inside and started boxing up everything Chelsea had stored in there. The exercise bike, still shrink-wrapped after 2 years. The vacuum. The lamps. 4 years of "I'll get that next weekend," stacked neatly under the covered porch where they belonged, which was to say out of my house. I had barely stacked the last box on the porch when my phone started ringing. Chelsea. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again almost immediately. And again. On the 4th call, I finally answered. "Mom." Her voice was sharp, thin with panic. "What did you do to the account?" I didn't say anything at first. I let the silence sit there for a second longer than was comfortable, because for 4 years I'd rushed to fill every silence Chelsea left open, and I wanted to know what it felt like not to. "Ryan's card just got declined. At the resort. We have a dinner reservation in an hour, Mom. This is humiliating." "The money's back where it belongs," I said, quiet and even. With me, silence. Then Ryan's voice taking over the phone, low and clipped in the way men get when they're trying to sound reasonable and failing. "Margaret, listen, this has to be a mistake. We need that transferred back today." "Today, Margaret." "No mistake," I said. "The arrangement is over. Your vacation should have been paid for with your own money." "Not mine." I hung up. Then I turned my phone off entirely and went to make myself lunch, chopping vegetables slow and steady, listening to the knife against the cutting board, feeling, for the first time in years, like my hands belonged to me. Hunfaralaz. That afternoon, tires screeched into my driveway. I didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. Chelsea was pounding on my front door before I'd even set down the dish towel. I walked over, but I didn't open it. Instead, I unlatched the small side window and looked out at her. Her face was flushed. her sunburn from Cancun somehow already fading into something paler and angrier. Ryan stood a few steps behind her, glancing at the street like he expected an audience, or maybe like he was hoping one wouldn't show up. "The code's changed," she said. "What did you do?" "I took back what was mine. You knew we were at the resort, you knew we had a dinner. You humiliated us in front of Patricia's whole family. Do you know what yesterday was, Chelsea?" She blinked, thrown by the question, the way people are thrown when you refuse to argue on the terms they've laid out for you. "My retirement," I said. 31 years. And I didn't get a single call from you. But you had time to write a caption about Patricia. Something flickered across her face. Not quite shame, not yet, but close to it. The way a person's expression changes right before they decide whether to feel guilty or defensive. She chose defensive. That's not fair. "I was going to call you. Things got hectic with the trip. For 4 years," I said, "you told me things were hectic with your finances, that the rent was due, that the landlord was threatening eviction, that you didn't know what else to do." I kept my voice level. The same voice I used to use on unruly 13-year-olds, the one that didn't need volume to carry weight. And this whole time, there was $45,000 sitting in an account you never touched. "We were saving it," she said. "In case something actually went wrong, with my money. You gave it to us. I gave it to you to keep you from losing your home, not to fund a savings account you never told me existed, while telling me you were drowning." Ryan stepped up beside her. "This is unbelievably cruel, Margaret. We promised my mother this trip. She's been talking about it for months. Do you understand what it's like to cancel something like that?" "Then you should have paid for it with your own money," I said. "Not 4 years of mine. You don't understand." Chelsea started, her voice cracking now. "I understand perfectly." And I told them, plainly, without raising my voice. 4 years, $950 a month, $45,600 total, all of it sent because she told me they were about to lose their home. All of it sitting untouched while they planned a beach vacation for Ryan's mother. "You're my mother," Chelsea said, tears standing in her eyes now. "You're supposed to help me." "I did help you," I said. "For 4 years, I helped you lie to yourself about what you actually needed." She had no answer for that. For a moment, standing on my porch in her faded sunburn and her expensive resort sandals, she looked younger than I'd seen her look in a decade, like the 6-year-old who used to argue her way out of trouble, except this time the argument wasn't landing. "Your things are on the porch," I told her. "Take them today. Whatever's left tomorrow goes to the donation center. You can't just throw me out of your garage like, you haven't lived here in 8 years, Chelsea." I closed the window. Behind it, I heard her pound on the door once more, then stop. A few minutes later came the scrape of cardboard against the porch boards, then a car door, then silence. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment afterward, waiting to feel something like regret. It didn't come. Honhongrelers. My son Danny called that evening, his face appearing on my tablet screen, video chat, the way we usually talked since he'd moved 2 states away for work. "Mom." He studied my face. "You look calm." Chelsea called me 3 times. "She says you emptied her savings and ruined Patricia's vacation." "I didn't empty anyone's savings," I said. "I took back money that was always mine." I turned the camera toward the folder of bank statements I'd printed out that afternoon. 4 years of transfers, screenshots of Chelsea's tearful texts about the foreclosure that never came, and the Cancun photo with Patricia's name in the caption. Danny went quiet, scanning through them. "How much a month?" $950. He did the math in his head, the way he'd always done math in his head since he was a boy standing at the kitchen counter with his homework. "That's over $45,000. 45.6. His jaw tightened in a way that reminded me so much of his father, it nearly took my breath away. "She told me you refused to help them years ago. She said you couldn't afford it, that you'd made it clear you weren't in a position to help, and that's why she never asked you to do more." "I paid my own bills, Danny. Every month, out of what was left after her $950. He rubbed his forehead the way he does when he's working through something he doesn't want to be true. Then he went very still, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. "Mom, I have to tell you something." A pause, long enough that I felt my stomach tighten. I've been covering Ryan's truck payment since February. I felt my stomach drop for the second time in 2 days. "What?" They told me Ryan's commissions had completely dried up, that they were behind on the lease and about to have it repossessed, that they didn't want to worry you on top of everything else you were already doing for them, and that if I could just help with the truck payment for a few months while things stabilized, it would make all the difference. He looked sick saying it out loud. "I've been sending $300 a month. I didn't tell you because Chelsea specifically asked me not to. She said you'd worry. What kind of truck, Danny? A new one. Loaded. Leather interior, the works. He closed his eyes. He upgraded it last spring. I remember thinking it seemed like a strange time to upgrade a truck if they were struggling, but Chelsea had an explanation for that too. Something about a lease being cheaper than the old payment. I believed her. Cancel it, I said. I already did. The second I saw those statements. He looked at me, ashamed, the same look Chelsea hadn't quite managed on my porch. I should have asked more questions. I'm an engineer, Mom. I check my own numbers for a living, and I never once checked hers. So should I said. We both trusted the story she gave us instead of asking to see the proof. He was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do now? I looked down the hallway, toward the garage door, toward everything that had sat in there untouched for years, taking up space that had never really been Chelsea's to take. I said, I'm finally going to turn that garage into something for myself. Danny almost laughed. Good, it's about time. You spent 31 years giving that space to other people's kids in a classroom. You should get to have one room that's just yours. That landed harder than he probably meant it to. The next few days were quiet in a way my house hadn't been in years. I cleared out the last of Chelsea's boxes, scrubbed the concrete floor, and started planning what the space could actually become. A painting studio, something I'd wanted since before Chelsea was born and had never once made room for, not in 3 decades of making room for everyone else. I was halfway through taping off the walls when Patricia showed up unannounced, dressed like she was attending a luncheon rather than knocking on a garage door. Margaret, she said, stepping past me into the driveway without quite being invited. I think we need to talk. I agree, I said, and gestured her toward 2 folding chairs I'd set up near my workbench. No living room for this conversation. No tea. No pretense of comfort. Chelsea is devastated, Patricia began, settling into the chair like it had personally offended her. She feels completely abandoned. She called me in tears from the airport. She lied to me for 4 years to fund a vacation for your family, I said. I'd say the abandonment runs the other direction. Patricia's mouth thinned. You're her mother. You have the means to help. Why wouldn't you continue helping? Because she manufactured a crisis to get that help. There's a difference between supporting your daughter through a hardship and being deceived into funding a vacation you were never invited on. Families don't keep score, Margaret. They shouldn't have to, I said. But mine apparently did, so now I'm the one holding the ledger. I reached over and handed her the same folder I'd shown Danny. She glanced through it, her expression tightening with each page, the transfer amounts, the panic texts about foreclosure. The photo captioned with her own name where mine should have been. You're punishing them for doing something nice for me, she finally said, though her voice had less certainty in it now. I'm declining to fund something I was never told about, I said. There's a difference. I would have been thrilled to see you get a trip like that. Patricia, genuinely. I just would have liked to know I was the one paying for it. She stood smoothing her skirt, though I noticed she didn't quite meet my eyes anymore. You've damaged your relationship with your daughter. No, I said, meeting her eyes anyway. Her choices did that. I just stopped paying for them. Patricia left without another word. I sat alone in my half-finished studio for a long while afterward, and instead of the guilt I expected, I felt something closer to relief. The particular relief of finally saying, out loud, a thing I'd been swallowing for years. A week later, my phone rang, Chelsea's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, then I did. Hi, Mom. Her voice was different, no panic, no performance, just tired. Hi, Chelsea. We had to sell Ryan's truck, she said. And we're not going on any more trips for a while. A pause. I went back to full-time work this week. At the marketing firm, the one I left 3 years ago because it was too stressful. How is it? Hard. But it's mine, at least. Nobody's giving me anything I didn't earn, which, I don't know, it's a strange feeling. I keep waiting for someone to bail me out and then remembering there's no one to call. That sounds like a good place to start from, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't just mean sorry I got caught. I mean, I actually thought about it, about what I did, for a whole week straight, and I don't have a good explanation. I told myself you could afford it, so it didn't really count as taking something from you. I told myself the money would exist whether I told you the truth or not, so what did the truth even matter? It mattered, I said gently. It always mattered. I know that now. Her voice cracked. I don't expect you to trust me again right away. I know that would be impossible. It would take time, I agreed. Could I come over sometime? Not for anything, just to see you. I looked around my studio, half-painted walls, an easel I hadn't unwrapped yet, boxes still waiting to be unpacked in the space that used to be hers. Yes, I said, but we're going to do things differently. I know. No money requests. I know, Mom. No emergencies manufactured to pressure me into anything. I know. And if you need advice, you can ask, but I won't solve your problems for you anymore. That was never actually helping you, and I understand that now too. Her voice became softer, smaller. Okay, Mom. We didn't solve everything on that call. I didn't offer her the garage code back, and she didn't ask for it. But something had shifted. She wasn't performing for me anymore, and I wasn't bracing for the next request. Months passed. My studio filled in slowly, an easel by the window, paint-splattered drop cloths, the particular quiet of a space that belonged only to me. Danny visited more, bringing his kids, filling the house with noise I'd missed without realizing how much I'd missed it. He'd rebuilt his own savings once he stopped quietly funding someone else's excuses, and he'd started tentatively asking me about my painting the way I used to ask him about his engineering projects. Genuine curiosity, not obligation. Chelsea and Ryan sold the truck, worked through the credit card debt left behind by the canceled trip, and slowly, carefully started coming around again, not with emergencies, not with tears, but with small, ordinary visits. She'd ring the doorbell now instead of letting herself in. She'd bring pastries instead of a crisis. One Sunday afternoon, she stood on my porch holding a paper bag, waiting the way a guest waits, not the way a daughter who assumes entry waits. I remembered you like these, she said, holding it out. I do, I said, and stepped aside to let her in. We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first time in years, she wasn't asking me for anything. She was just there. She asked about my studio. She asked, almost shyly, if she could see it, and when I showed her, she didn't say anything about the garage code or the boxes I'd donated. She just looked at the sage-colored wall I'd painted and said it was pretty. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully repaired. But it was real, and real was enough. I used to believe that being a good mother meant constant sacrifice. That love was measured in what I was willing to give up. It took me 31 years of teaching other people's children and 4 years of quietly funding my own daughter's lies to understand something simpler. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's just erosion, slow and polite, until there's nothing left of you to give. I didn't reclaim my money that morning because I stopped loving my daughter. I reclaimed it because I finally remembered I was allowed to. The garage door has a new code now. Only I know it. And for the first time and longer than I can remember, that feels like exactly enough.